I'd like to thank World Merit for the opportunity of doing this interview. The first question I've been asked is what field am I in and how important is the field? I actually work in the area of peace and conflict studies, which is sometimes also described as dispute resolution, conflict resolution, or negotiation and conflict resolution. My own work over the years has evolved into that of a full-time mediator, and I'm a peace mediator. I work with people who are in violent conflict, warring factions, governments versus rebels, and so on and so forth, with a view to mediating peace agreements or at least stabilizing a situation. How important is the field? Peace is something that for many people is often elusive. Those of us who've lived in environments where power is used to abuse a certain group of people or to dominate or oppress sectors of society, those of us who've been touched by violence, even in our own personal lives, people who are struggling to make it through a war situation, hoping to return to a life where they may just live in peace and hopefully develop their potential, enjoy being in relationships with other people, seeing a full and productive life, all know that the field is very important. It's hard to imagine what in some ways is more important than peace. War, of course, is destructive of the environment, both the natural and the built environment, and often it is the struggle for resources that is at the heart of what is causing war. So those of us who are concerned about other people, concerned about the natural environment, and want to see a situation in which human beings can reach their full potential, really appreciate the fact that the field of peace and conflict resolution is extremely important. The next question that I was asked to consider is what was the turning point or most important year or something to that effect that brought me to where I am today. And becoming a peace mediator on a full-time basis has been for me a work in progress. There was no one significant year in my life, nor one significant event that propelled me into the profession that I'm in at this time and working as a peace mediator. It was a series of things, and when you think about your own personal development, while there might be moments that really catapult you forward, give you an opportunity or an insight that really are sort of life-defining, and I have had moments like that, it is a series of steps from childhood through to young adulthood, working professionally in different aspects of my career, and significant moments that led to what I do today on a full-time basis. Some of it has to do with my own family of origin and the fact that historically my great-grandfather and my grandmother were really healers. There was almost a shamanistic trend in the family. Although I am not indigenous, I'm a Caucasian, but I could see that the path of healing, the path of dealing with the world of psychological, emotional, and spiritual issues contributed to my development. And then at one point when I was 26 years old and found myself working in the field of correctional services as a senior prison administrator, having come out of a background of psychology and philosophy, I was thrown into a hostage-taking incident. I wasn't personally involved as a hostage, but I had responsibility as a member of a team to deal with the fact that 9 of our staff members had been taken hostage in a correctional center. we had no experience at that time with what to do with hostage taking, how to negotiate with hostage takers. And so we were really flying by the seat of our pants, thinking about what do you do to control and contain the event, make sure that the amount of harm that's being done is limited, and then think about how you might negotiate with the hostage takers. As it turned out, at a certain point, one of the older guards came out of the prison, tied actually by a rope and led out by the inmates who had taken the hostages, and signaled that, something to this effect. They were, it was over. They were going to begin killing people, and already a special weapons attack team had been assembled on the site, and there was no more negotiating. We sent the SWAT team in, and fortunately the incident was resolved rather easily. Some of the inmates had already made their way into the medical supplies and had taken some drugs. They were rather easily overcome, and the question then became, well, how are the 9 hostages? Are they suffering the Stockholm Syndrome? Will they be able to return to work and function, productively and healthfully and that kind of thing? So I was assigned to interview them and see whether or not they were indeed struggling, whether they could go back to work. Had any of them identified so strongly with the hostage takers that they could no longer function as staff members? I found that one older individual did need psychiatric care, and we did our best then to reintroduce those staff into the prison again to work, with the inmates. The issue, though, or the incident for me at 26 raised the issue about, could we have negotiated more effectively? Would a mediator have helped? And then I set out to be trained. I was quickly trained shortly thereafter as a hostage negotiator, and I found that there was some training available as a mediator. So I took that mediation training. It was very primitive by comparison with today's standards. It focused mainly on communication and relationship building. There was no heavy-duty analysis of the conflict or the kind of depth that mediators use today in their practice. But it set me on a path of reinforcing the idea that there was a need for some individuals to intervene in conflict settings and mediate, try to heal, try to help them restore relationships, seek issues of apology, remedies that might sort of settle the dispute and move forward in a better relationship. That work continued to deepen. I found that it was challenging being a mediator, and I wanted to deepen my technical and theoretical knowledge in addition to sort of a repertoire of communication and facilitation techniques. So the work then that I did at Harvard back in the early 80s, looking at the much more analytical aspects of negotiation and conflict resolution, was very helpful. So one should never underestimate the value of an education, of specialized training, to augment your own personal skills and your own personal psychological and emotional development. Sometimes you're not going to get a job instantly doing the thing that you've been trained to do, but there may be a time when you will, and there may just be occasions when you'll take that knowledge and those skills and use them in ways that you hadn't thought of when you were going through the actual training. Shortly after doing that work, I found myself in war-torn Mostar, and it was a really war-destroyed city, bitterly divided. There was tit-for-tat rifle fire going on at the time, and my job was to try and find moderates on both sides of the conflict who would be willing to meet and begin then to exchange information and search for peace, so that if those moderates could find harmony, they might then sort of infect their community and bring on the more hardliners as peace would spread through the community. Well, that was a bitter conflict, and those of you who know Mostar at the time of the war would recognize that it was a huge challenge. The upshot of that was that I realized that there was more needed to be effective in peace mediation work than communication skills, even rather sophisticated analyses of conflict, that we really had to pay attention to the issue of power. So a really profound moment in my development was when I recognized that there's more to thinking about conflict in terms of power than just who has more power, what would be the impact of those with a bigger stick, who has the clout, how will power play itself out. There was more needed than attending to conventional notions of power. And what emerged for me was that peace building, peace work, mediation for peace purposes is really the power transformative endeavor. It isn't a matter of balancing power over one another, but it's helping people shift so that they actually use power differently. They begin to see that they can have power with the other side, that their needs and the other party's needs can be met. Indeed, that 1 plus 1 can actually equal 3. Instead of 1 minus 1 is 0, and sort of a calculation of power in terms of who has more clout, who's going to use power over the other side, and how can we modify that, how can we temper it, to actually shift away from using power over and accommodating that calculus of power and that perspective on power, to saying there are new ways in which power can be used in relationships between groups within democratic societies where people want voice, they want to have power with others, where the potential is far greater when one and one get together and synergy informs the dynamic in the relationship. That's the real challenge, I think. I believe that people are tired of a power over kind of world. And whether it's power over children, power over women, power over ethnic groups by a particular government or regime, whether it's power over the environment, wherever abuse and oppressive uses of power are taking place, I'm of the view most people would want that changed and be able to live in peace so that they can actually realize the potential of a power with kind of reality. There were other incidents then as I went on in my career and began to try to apply that. And I think that what occurred to me was that not only is it important to think intellectually and analytically and work emotionally and in a skilled way as a mediator to help parties discover the potential of power with one another, but it challenges me to reflect on who I am and what are the values I hold. Every one of us in the morning has to wake up and get out there and face the world and try to make a living and enjoy, friendships and whatever it is that interests us and turns us on and excites us. But in many ways, below all of those regular routine things, there's a question that we ask and answer almost unconsciously. It is on the basis of what do I act? And when you begin to ask that question, you begin to realize that you're getting into the area of values and the kind of deep-held, possibly unconscious values that you hold that get you up in the morning and operate with you and allow you to function in the world. And so my own examination of that, which was a profound exercise of self-reflection in terms of developing my personal professional practice and who I am as a human being, was that it's what are those values that sees other people in almost a sacred way, that I'm not alienated from others, I'm not alienated from the environment, I'm intricately connected, and these connections are so important, and that I'm only who I am in relation to other. So other is not alien, other is not to be dominated, other is someone or the environment that indeed nurtures and makes me what I am. That's a long answer to a lot of issues that help me define my practice and give you some insight into moments in my career when I was propelled forward. World Merit's existence is a wonderful thing, and I think one of the toughest questions to answer is what am I doing personally to help younger people and leaders like yourself who want to make a positive difference in the world. I have to remember, and I hope you'll remember, that at one time I was young too. And I can remember, having a clear view of what I thought I could do to contribute. And I knew that I had valuable ideas and that my insights, even in my late teens and early 20s, and when I began working professionally as a junior person, within the job site, when older adults and mentors, people who recognized that I had potential, embraced me, that was so gratifying, and it was so self-validating, and it was so inspiring for me to even do more. And so one of the things that I've always done is I've always tried to value and respect the insights and contributions of younger people who work with me or who seek me out in a coaching role or a mentoring role, or simply to get some advice or get a lead that they might exploit to get the kind of work that they hope to do. I know that young people today are far more advanced than I was when I was your age. The people that have worked for me as interns and on my staff in their 20s often have several languages, multiple experiences as unpaid or sometimes paid interns or junior associates. They have worldviews and insights that far exceed those of my generation. So the people who are involved in World Merit are obviously bright, intelligent, ambitious in the most positive sense of the term, and have a huge amount to contribute to the world. How to get that potential realized and engaged is a challenge that the older generation must turn its attention to. I've tried my best to create space wherever I am for younger people to be involved professionally with me and actually function in an intelligent and engaged way, critiquing my practice, taking the reins occasionally, trying out facilitation and mediation under my guidance in fairly serious cases. And I've also tried to write books and mentor and be available always to assist young people when they do contact me. More recently, what I've been doing is I've been giving up work. I'm older. I don't need the amount of work that I have the opportunity to do, and I create opportunities by farming the work out as much as I possibly can and in a responsible manner to younger people. It's getting to the point where it's your turn. I think at a larger level, though, society has to get its head around economic and political and political economic models of how we're going to engage younger, capable people in productive, gratifying work that they are very capable of doing. One concept that I think needs to be debated publicly is the notion of BIG, a basic income guarantee. I don't think socialist models, communism, pure capitalism, any of those pure models are working, and I don't think they can be reinvented as such or recycled. And there needs to be a real international conversation take place about how do we engage this wonderful capacity found in the younger generation in societies all over, where so many, and up to 60% or more in some countries, are unemployed. We don't need the amount of physical labor that we used to need to produce goods and services that are consumed today. I mean, we're not going to be able to engage hundreds of people in tasks now that computers, robots, and machinery will do, and we're prepared to have them do it. So how do we get our thinking around useful ways of engaging people? The idea of a basic income guarantee would say that virtually all adults, anyone from 18 or over, for example, would be given from the collective wealth of society a basic income guarantee. And then they're free to, move beyond that and be competitive, try to realize their own capitalist, agenda, if that's what they wish to do. But we would then have the opportunity of having more people working through different jobs and sharing work and getting credit for non-paid work, meaningful credit for non-paid work, because we'd address somehow that big problem that everyone has. How do we feed the wolf at the door? And all of us has a wolf to feed. And there are so many ways that people can contribute to making this a better society. It's time for a communication, a large-scale dialogue around how do we structurally deal with the fact that we have wonderful capacity, but we're not using it to its full potential.